a wee girl growing up in Scotland on the wild and windy west coast, we had rules that governed every aspect of our lives. Rituals that were as unfathomable and necessary as the elemental forces that surrounded us. We lived in a communion with the ordinary, the homely, and the uncanny. For instance, hadn't my granny always taught me that storms were caused by witches with unbroken pieces of eggshells. She even had a rhyme for it. When you're done eating, gie your eggshells a beating. Never leave them whole. You must break the shell to bits, lest witches mak a boat o' it. Far by night the witches roam to devil the sea and drive ships frae home. The witches would gather the unbroken pieces of eggshell and set them neath the new moon when it was naught but a sliver. And as the moon grew night by night, the eggshells would grow. And whilst they were waiting for their eggshell boats to grow, the witches would be gathering the winds in their kerchiefs and tying and binding them so that they could later be loosed to their will. When the moon was full and the eggshells were about the size of a wee boat that could hold 3 witches, for they always travelled in threes, you ken, they would hoist their kerchief sails on a broomstick mast and rowing with their other broomsticks set their boats on the rising tide, searching the coast for ships to drive upon the rocks or perish in the storm. Now, as a modern child, I questioned the scientific veracity of this information. My grandfather, a fisherman, told me about an encounter he'd had with sea witches one night. For it was always at night that they went out to the remote deep sea trenches to fish for the herring. We'd sit on nets off of fearles, and it was a bumper haul, about 300 cran. Oh, we were counting our siller even before we were to market, bragging and singing. No need to wait for wind or sail, we're the masters of the sea, and the northern minch and the Norway deeps, where the herring shoals are free. Hubris. We were so full of ourselves, we didn't see the witches and their eggshell boats creeping up on our lee. They loosed the first knot of their kerchief sail, and the wind began to blow. But we just laughed and sang, windy old weather, boys, stormy old weather. When the wind blows, we'll all gang together. But then they loosed the second knot, and they were cackling, and the wind blew cold and deadly. Whoo! And we, of course, saw the witches knew, and we ran to batten down the hatches, tighten the ropes, but it was too late, and they loosed the third knot, and the sky was black, and the wind was deathly, and the lightning flashed, and then we saw it, the horrible, ghostly faces in the sky, the sea hags come out from hell to play at the bidding of witches. Sea hags are forces beyond the ken of men. Blackness and terror from the void aforetime. They are the sea's anger, the living gale. And they open their maws, blowing the gale a wind. Gale force 8, 9, 10, slamming into us like a living force. Solid, bracking the windows in the wheelhouse, taking out the lights and the radio. And then it was flashing, black, white, and the thunder so close, it was coming boom, 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 till it was only one continual boom, boom. Then the sky, it was just tearing open. And we almost gave up. But then we heard the sound that gave courage to our hearts. The calling voices on the wind, the ancestors, the spirits of fishermen and sailors and poor souls lost at sea, returned to fight at our sides. And the witches cackled and gnashed their teeth. And the dead shrieked as they fought one another. And that horrible black sky that was flashing, black and white, and the booming thunder, we saw the sea hags turn the gale on the witches themselves. They witches had called on forces beyond their ken, as if they were playthings for their bidding. And they had the anger of the old girls now. We watched the hags turn the fist of the sea on the witches and their eggshell boats until they were gone. Then the wind died down. The thunder just slowed to a distant sound. And the lightning stopped. And we are left in the starry darkness. But the dead were still there. And they were lonely. We could feel them, their loneliness. They're calling to us, remember me, stay with me, come to me, as they passed around and through us. Then the surface of the sea turned to a writhing sheet of fire. Daybreak. With the rising sun, all spirits were dispersed. We'd come through the tempest, weathered the storm, and we had a catch to bring in, a bumper haul. And we rose to our feet, and we sang a song, a prayer we all knew. We are boats and gear, we're faring on the wild and wasteful ocean. It's there on the deep we harvest and we reap our bread. Chasing bonny shoals o' heron. Well, after hearing that story, I can tell you that I never leave my eggshells unbroken. And I beseech all of you, for the love of God and the mercy of all sailors and poor folk who go upon the sea, when you're done eating, give your eggshells a beating. Never leave them whole. Remember.